now. What's up, everybody? Welcome to my channel. I have another special guest, author and speaker, Elijah. He's going to be the new author of a book called Hierarchy of Existence, The Blueprint for Personal and Societal Transformation. Elijah, welcome to my channel. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me, Jerry.
Okay, great. So we're going to talk about as a to give us tell the people a little bit about your background, like where are you from? What inspired you to write this book at this point in your life? And what's this book about?
Okay. The book is largely based off of the theory of human motivation by Abraham Maslow. And in this book, he talks about the five levels of human motivation, which are the physiological needs, the safety needs, connection, esteem, and then what he calls self-actualization. To answer the other part of the question there, the reason why I'm doing this is because I've had a lot of experiences throughout my life that I've learned a great deal from. And the idea is to hopefully help anyone else be able to better equip themselves to overcome the struggles in life that are inevitable. Really, it's just one of those things that I was able to get out of a pretty serious hardship through books. So I'm just kind of trying to pay that forward.
What kind of hardship did you go through, and how did the books help you?
Well, I grew up for the most part without a father. I had a father when I was really young, but then parents divorced, and of course, my mother was having to work, I think two and sometimes three jobs, and I just didn't have a father figure. And mom was always busy working, so all of my teenage years, I did not have any father figure or role models growing up. So got involved with the wrong kind of crowd, ended up getting into a lot of trouble, and without going into too much detail there, learned a lot of lessons the hard way. And then it wasn't until in my early 20s that I ended up meeting a girl, and we got pregnant. And then it was from then that I was like, hey, I really have a responsibility here. I have another person that's going to be depending on me, and I kind of need to button up at this point. So I started, got introduced to self-development books, which I had never been introduced to until that point in time. And there was the first book that I remember listening to. It was an audio book by Lou Tice, and the name of the book was Mastering the Attitude of Achievement. And the premise of this book was that people behave and act according to what they believe to be the truth, not necessarily the truth for what it really is, but what they believe it to be. So that was a bit of a paradigm shift for me because the book really helped me unpack um, some of the negative beliefs that I had and how they were affecting me and how they were directly dictating my perception of my reality. And once I was able to unpack all that through a lot of meditation, through a lot of other studies, because as soon as I learned this, I just started just deep dive into all sorts of self development books. I mean, I read probably 50 or so books within the next few months after that. And it was just a whole new world had been opened up to me. So what I'm trying to do with this book is I'm trying to consolidate a lot of that knowledge that I've learned throughout the years into one book and hopefully make it to where it's a an easily followed routine that you can just start from the ground and build your way up, right? Figure out how to take care of yourself psychologically and physiologically, and then figure out your routines, work on your connections with other people, be it be a relationship, be it friendship, however that is. Figure out how to work on your self-esteem, and then figure out how to bring value to the world around you. Like that's kind of where I'm at with that one.
Yeah, I when I read a book sometimes, and I think most people when they read books, sometimes you can't remember what you read. I think what helps me remember books is like if it's a really good story rather than like facts. And if there's
Hmm.
facts and statistics, like they're interesting, it kind of drives a point home. But actually remembering what I read is like a really good story. I think so
Hmm.
that's that's my first question is how do you remember what you read? The second part of my question is, um, I think that's really important that you have noticed that people they believe what they think is true, not actually what is the truth. So, I had my
Hmm.
my fiance, she thought she was very jealous and very upset about something because she had missed a very essential piece of information. So she was believing this fantasy of like insecurity and all this other stuff, but she had missed an essential part of that information. And part of that information was that contact was initiated from someone else, not from me, but from someone else. And because of that, they were believing a lie. And I think what happens is if you believe a lie and nobody shows you the truth, you'll die on that hill. So back to I'll let you answer the first part first. How do you remember what you read and how do you apply that into your life?
Um, well, you're right. Most people do remember stories better than just the text, as if it were a like if it were a school book, rather, just straight information. Now, my book is probably going to be more along the lines of the academic structure. It's just crammed full of information. I do plan on writing more books in the future, probably breaking it down into smaller chunks and maybe try to apply a story to that. I know the Arbinger Institute does a really good job of that with, for example, they have Leadership and Self-Deception as well as The Anatomy of Peace. Those were two really, really good books that were written in a story format. Um, but to answer your question, it's going to sound kind of ridiculous, but I learned it from there's the master. What's the name of the book? It's by Brian Tracy. Accelerated Learning Techniques by Brian Tracy, and this book teaches how people learn. Like this the whole book is about how people learn, the different ways to learn. There are different learning styles. There's audible, there's visual, there's linguistic. There's a few different things that go into play with that. So one of the things that I have learned for myself is whenever I read, usually I'll get off somewhere by myself. And when I read aloud. So I'm hearing my own voice, I'm hearing the words, I'm seeing the words on the page. And then to add a little extra, if I'm kind of in a mood where I'm just not really don't really feel like I'm taking in a lot of the information, read it in like a funny voice or something. And that makes it fun. All right. So you're entertaining yourself with the content, right? And you're using your own creativity. And what this does is this it generates an emotion, a sense of joy. Now, if you ever want to remember anything at all, it's key to tie an emotion to it. And the best emotion to tie to it is happiness. And that's something you can do on your own. However, perfect example of this is usually, and it can be any kind of traumatizing thing or anything as well. So anger, sadness, trauma, things like that, usually you vividly remember those events because it's deeply connected with an emotion. So, short answer is tie it to an emotion. And if it's something that you're trying to do on your own, tie it to a positive emotion. Um, if you can generate that, you can just use your creativity on that. And if you have any questions or want to learn more about that, there's plenty of books out there on that topic. So, let's see the second part of your question, though. Um, that's a hard one. I'll get back with you on that one if I can.
Yeah, yeah, because what do they say? They say that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different
Yeah.
results. Well, if you're not getting the results that you want on and you're not having the relationship you want, the lifestyle you want, the marriage that you want, it's because you have the problem, you're believing in a lie, you're believing that this method is going to work all the time. And
Hmm.
the thing I'm learning real quick, real fast as a newlywed is communication is paramount. Now, one thing, let's switch gears here. Let's talk about masculinity in 2025. A lot of guys think that they need to be submissive and they need to be docile and cooperative. Why do they think that? Because they're believing a lie. The truth is, women don't want a submissive man. The woman doesn't want a weak man. I asked, let me tell you something. This girl, my fiance, she's very strong, very independent. She's taller than me, and she's very physically strong and mentally strong. Why do I say
Mhm.
she's physically strong? Well, we wrestle sometimes. Um, and sometimes she'll catch me off guard and she'll throw me around, which is not an easy thing to do. I'm a pretty strong guy. Why do I say she's mentally strong? Well, we went into this ice bath and she took it. Like my bones were freezing and I could barely stand. And she's like taking this, it's painful. And I'm like, dang. But she doesn't want a guy that she can throw around. Now, but if you come across as dominant or they call it chauvinistic. In Spanish, they have a word for it. They call it machista, which is a chauvinist pig, is what the word is. Machista is called chauvinist pig. That's looked on as an insult. I don't look at it as an insult. I look at it as a compliment. Why? Because my mindset has changed. My mindset has changed from a position of strength rather than from a position of weakness. You had mentioned earlier in the conversation that you said you had a kid. Did you come through a divorce? Was that something you're familiar?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I've had
I
a
know you
divorce. I have three
personally,
kids.
so we know that you've had some battles. I don't know how much you want to talk about, but I know you've learned a lot about that, and you're kind of mentoring me on my stuff. So, what are your thoughts? Would you agree or disagree? Do women like strength? Would you disagree with that? What are some lessons you've learned from communication and being able to stand your ground as a masculine man, saying, "Look, I'm not putting up with this. There's some hard lines where I'm going to draw." Where your thoughts on how a man should project his masculinity?
Well, there's a delicate balance that's got to take place with that. I do believe that there is some submissive qualities. However, that term can be used and misunderstood.
From the man or the woman when
So,
you say submissive?
well, both sides. Okay, so the man should submit themselves to the wife. The wife should submit themselves to the man or the husband in this scenario. However, I call it a like a 41, 49, 51, right? Ultimately, I think that the man is supposed to have the final say so. That's just because of my scriptural background. And that's how the scriptures teach about this, right? The man is the head of the household. He's the leader. He's the one that provides, protects everything, right? However, like I said, there's a balance that needs to take place. So what I think um, that leader or the masculine nature that I believe is attractive to a woman isn't necessarily someone who say rules with an iron fist or is a tyrannical leader, right? You don't want to be the tyrant. You don't want to be the one that's just overly controlling. You do as I say because I said so, right? However, you do want to have you want to know who you are. You want to know what your values are, and you want to stand firm on those values, and you don't want to let anyone else push you over that boundary that you've created, right? So if you set a boundary, you say, no, this is where I stand on the matter. Don't don't budge, right? Even if it's your wife, say, no, this is where I stand, period. Not gonna change, right? And I think that's the attractive part because that's when a man is so firm in his own understanding and that he knows who he is and he's a man of integrity, right? That's something that's masculine. That's the essence of masculinity in my understanding. Okay. That means that the man is the rock. He's the one who's steadfast. He's the one that, he can take the beating, but he's still going to stand firm in his beliefs and the way he sees things. So, however, that being said, the man should also be smart and be willing to listen. There's a lot of scriptures and a lot of verses in scripture that go along these lines. Like one of my favorite ones is be slow to speak, slow to wrath, and quick to listen, right? Don't lose your temper, but be willing to listen. Seek that understanding. Do not judge a matter before it is fully heard. Okay. You want to fully hear out the matter before you give any kind of judgment call. You can't just look at something at surface value and then make a judgment call and then say, okay, this is what it's going to be because this is what I'm seeing really quick off the spot. So that's just not, that's not very conducive to a functional existence or coexistence with another person. You want to be able to hear each other out. You want to be able to learn the deepest reasons behind the desires of the other person. And that's when it comes to relationships specifically, and this is learned from experience and something that I failed at, to be completely honest with you. Um, I should say we failed at. It was a equal part on that. When a man and a woman marry, they become one. It's not two people that are just living together. They are one flesh. They are one being at that point. So they are for each other. If you say, for example, get into an argument with your spouse and you don't listen and you don't understand and you don't put forth the effort to really try to understand where this person is coming from, and you put your foot down and say, no, this is what I'm saying and this is how it goes. I don't care what you say. This is where I stand. Say you win the argument, right? Well, now you're just living or married to or stuck with a defeated person that's your other half. You're defeating the other half of your being at that point. So it's always best to look, explain where you are, explain where you're coming from, but you want to listen to them and try to come to a meeting ground in the middle somewhere. Some people call it a compromise. Some people call it you finally come to a mutual understanding. Sometimes you may realize that your values just simply cannot align in that particular area. And then you have to make the decision, is this something that we can live with? Because you're never going to come into 100% alignment with another person, right? Is that misalignment something that you can continue to live with and still manage the marriage? Or is that something that, I mean, in my case, it was one of those things we couldn't. It was just something that we were not willing to compromise, either one of us. So
Why?
um, that's a difficult one for me. For me, it's the communication. I'm thriving to have open communication. I'm sorry, striving to have open communication. And this is what I'm aiming for, just what I've described, right? That complete open, I want to hear you out. I want to know everything it is. However, I don't know if it was something that maybe she just has some childhood trauma or something along those lines. She's just unwilling to open with those certain areas. She just wouldn't do it. And anytime that I ever tried to give guidance or try to say, hey, look, this is why I feel, this is what I feel, this is why I feel the way, and this is what I'm not going to tolerate. Okay. And usually it was towards the behavior towards my children. She's very controlling and a little domineering and be quite frank, she's just irritable all the time. And it's like, look, you can't just sit there and yell at the kids like that. I'm not going to stand for that. So that was something I had a problem with. Well, she could not ever receive any type of feedback from me. And I think that it was because of my past. I had a rough past. Like I said, I was involved with substance abuse, wrong crowd, things like that when her and I met. So from my understanding based off of many books that I've read and kind of grouped this together, what I presume happened is she put this label on me as this druggy junkie kind of guy because she doesn't understand that world at all. She wasn't grown up in that. She was very sheltered from that kind of world. So it doesn't matter who you are, if you even associate with someone who does illegal drugs, then you're considered that, right? You slap a label on it, everybody gets treated like that, right? I'm sure you probably on the other side of this. You used to work in law enforcement, so you probably got treated like a cop all the time. People just say, you just like, hey, I'm a person. I'm not just a cop. I'm a person, right? I'm an individual. I'm a unique person. Well, that's just when you slap a label on somebody and just treat them according to that label, you're removing their individualism. You're removing the fact that they are a unique person with their own strengths, their own flaws, their own virtues, their own shortcomings, their own struggles, their own battles. Everything about that person you're removing, and you're just treating them to that one little label that you're putting on that. So you're closing the book, you're ignoring the content within the side of the book, and you're treating it according to that cover that's on the front. That's it. The cover that you yourself have put there. So that's what she was doing to me. And of course, I didn't appreciate that because look, I'm a growing person. Yeah, I've made some mistakes and everything. However, I've corrected a lot of those problems in my life. I've changed significantly. I'm no longer the person that I used to be, but I'm yet, in her eyes, I'm still treated like that. So because of that, that blinds her, or it puts up a barrier to where she was unable to receive any sort of feedback from me because of that relationship dynamic. She she thought she was I mean, she perceived that she was better than me because she didn't do drugs. She had never had to deal with that lifestyle, right? She kept herself away from all that. So therefore she was, quote, better than me. And that just wasn't, it wasn't a conducive circumstance. I'm like, look, I'm going to need to be respected as a person. Um, I'm not just some label that you slap on me. So that was the biggest problem. And I think that was the wedge that drove us apart, was that just the narrow mindedness and the unwillingness to really try to listen and actually just try to work on things. She just wasn't willing to do that. She couldn't get past that. I don't know why. Still don't have that knowledge today.
Yeah, and then I think once you throw children in the mix there, it can be really, really stressful. It's not easy having kids. Would you agree with that?
Oh, very much so. And I would say honestly that the divorce was probably a bit of a catalyst for me because I had grown quite a bit. We had three kids, and I had
How
changed
old were you
substantially as a
when you had the first one?
with the first kid. Oh man, that was 26.
You were 26? Okay.
Yeah, I was 26, and I had quit doing drugs, quit drinking. Well, I still drank a little bit here and there, um, probably more than I should, but I wouldn't label myself as I wasn't a severe alcoholic or anything, but still, admittedly, probably more than I should. And my big thing was then is I had gotten rid of all the friends that I was hanging out with and quit doing all the illegal stuff that I was doing, but I started playing a lot of video games, and I put, I mean, way too much time into video games. I was a bit of an addict when it came to video games, and I didn't put enough time and effort into the family. Now, part of that was because whenever I tried, I would get rejected by her. Um, and what I mean by that is whenever it didn't seem like there was anything that I could ever do that was satisfactory. It didn't matter if I cleaned the house, washed the dishes, cooked the food. There was always something wrong with what I did, right? There was never any gratitude. There was never any um, appreciation there. It was always just like, well, you should have done it this way, or if you had done it this way, it would have been better. I'm like, okay, well, I'm just not going to do anything then. If you're just going to constantly criticize me for everything that I do, I'm just not going to do anything. So I kind of shut down in there, and I was just more or less, I was just wasting my life for a long time there. And the divorce ended up happening, and that was one of those things that it sent me through a pretty hardcore downward spiral emotionally, because now, I mean, I truly love my children. They're my world. And she just, because of the situation and the state that I'm in, possession is 9/10 of the law. She had the children at the time. She made a whole bunch of false accusations against me, saying that I was still doing drugs, which I was not. I even went to many drug tests, hair follicle tests, all that stuff. Had to go through all these hoops just to prove that I was not the person that she was labeling me as. Even had to pay for everything myself, paid for all the therapy and anger management and all that stuff, which granted, I started getting into the anger management thing. He started opening up some areas of emotional maturity that I had not learned in the past. And I will say that I definitely grew from that and I learned a lot of things. But I think it was because of the trauma of losing my children and the whole family and all that stuff that really drove me to understand these emotions. Because in the past, if I had these heavy emotions like I was in that time, I would just go get high or drunk or whatever it was, and just numb the pain and run away from it. And that was my resolve. Well, I had quit doing that, so I didn't have that to go off to now. So now I had to figure out how to work my way through these emotions, and learning all the emotional management and figuring out how all that stuff worked really helped me learn myself, and it helped me grow substantially. And that's part of the things that I'm trying to put out in this book as well, with um, the psychological part of things. So that's one of the most fundamental things that you want to learn. You want to learn, one, how to sustain yourself, how to survive, right? You want to keep yourself fed, watered, keep your hygiene, your fitness, things like that. You've got to keep all that stuff taken care of. And then the other half of that, that's your physical side. The other half of that is your psychological side. You want to know how and why you think and feel the way that you do. And there's the various techniques that I'm trying to lay out in the book that'll explain that. So it's just more or less like a tool book, really. Like, hey, look, I'm struggling in this area of my life. These are some quick advice, tool tips that I can do to improve in that area. But that's kind of a backstory on the divorce and how all that happened and what I've learned from that.
Yeah, it definitely sounds interesting. I do want to we'll got to go ahead and wrap up here because we're getting short on time, but
Hmm.
regarding what you said, we're talking about submissiveness and being dominant. Yeah, you don't want a girl that's 100% compliant. And I've had women that, oh yeah, whatever, what kind of ice cream you like? Well, whatever kind of ice cream you like, Well, stand on one foot and bark like a dog. And she stands on one foot and barks like a dog, like in that movie, Coming to America. The prince was getting a wife. You don't want someone who's 100% compliant because I like disagreement, especially if you have disagreement with someone who's rational and intelligent. Like, that's one of the things I really liked about why I decided to marry the girl that I'm with now is because she was very intelligent and rational. And I'd be like, okay, let's have a conversation. Why are you feeling this? Help me to understand this. And what that does is it creates intellectual stimulation. And
Hmm.
when you have someone who's not completely emotional, she isn't now, don't get me wrong, she is a woman and she is emotional, and I do have to I have to hold my boundaries. Now, when I say hold my boundaries, now what does that actually mean? Okay, well, one boundary is you're not gonna berate me. You're not gonna talk down to me in front of other people. I draw a hard line. You're gonna work
Hmm.
out. I don't want to date a fatso. You're gonna stay in shape. I want you to look good. If that's a problem, let me know right now because let's not get into this. Um, Boundaries, what expectations. Now granted, if she's like sick and she's incapable of getting to the gym, well, maybe you can eat right, but maybe you can listen to an audiobook. But we're not gonna be the reason why I'm doing this, and I think the reason why, and you be able to give your 2 cents because I don't have a family, I don't have kids. You have 3 kids, is because I don't want her talking down to me in front of my kids. You're not going to talk down to me in front of other people, and you're definitely not going to talk down to me in front of my kids. And what you say to me personally is going to be limited based on the respect. Don't come with me attacking me. Talk to me as an adult, talk to me in a normal tone, you know,
Hmm.
and I enforce those boundaries. And when those boundaries are crossed, and women get PMS, women get emotional, and that's fine. I'll say, hold on a sec. Why are you talking to this? Why are you talking to me like this? You need to calm down and let's come back and visit it. But I try to not escalate the situation. Um, they call that in law enforcement crisis management, being able to not being pulled into the crisis, being able to stay objective. I'm not I'm emotionally invested in the relationship because we have an emotional investment. Either we have kids or we have a marriage or we're together. But we need to build this on respect. So that's what I mean when I say boundaries. The other thing is I think authority comes with integrity. So the more you do what you say you're going to do, and the more you keep those promises that you made to yourself, this is why I think goals are so effective. By the way, guys, I do have a coaching group that's going to be opening up here next month. If you guys, any viewers watching want to get involved, it's something that's available for people. And what we do is we build it based off of your goals. So the more you put your goals and you align those goals and you do what you say you're going to do for yourself and for her, you respect yourself more and she tends to respect you more. So if you say you're going to do something. So um I think once you have this, they put on the glasses like your ex, she put on the sunglasses, and in these sunglasses I see a filter of a guy that plays video games and a drug addict. That's going to be her filter unless you change that filter
Yep.
through a history of your actions, So those are the things that we do that doesn't happen immediately, but over time and consistency can affect a change. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that as far as boundaries goes, and as far as authority comes with your integrity of keeping your word to yourself and to other people. Because I know you've got kids and I know they remember what you say. If you say you didn't do something, they'll be like, hey, Dad, how come you didn't do what you said you're going to do? So I'm sure you got some stories to share on that.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. Integrity is a key requirement to exercise proper authority. Um, Definitely, because otherwise it just falls apart. Regarding the 100% submissive spouse, anybody that says otherwise would be fooling themselves. That would get boring after a while. I mean, it's just and like, what do you just be your own person, right? I mean, you can't do everything somebody says. You got to have a little bit of pushback. Otherwise, it's boring. Yeah, it might be fun for the first however long, but it's going to get boring after a while. Guarantee it.
Not even God
There,
wants robots. He likes he
no,
likes our kids. He
no,
likes his
there's a
kids.
reason why he created us with free will. Because otherwise, if you're talking about the creator in that sense, I mean, this is an omnipotent, omnibenevolent, benevolent, just omniscient being that knows all and he could easily create an entire species or an entire creation that's 100% submissive. What's the point in that? It would get boring. You want something that can reject you if it so chooses, that freedom of will. Um, but at the same time, to your other point there with let me rephrase it like this. So there's this part in scripture that refers to the woman as a helpmeet. A lot of people don't like that translation, but if you really dig into the definitions of the word, it means something more along the lines of a beneficial adversary. So a woman
Wow.
is there
Beneficial
to give
adversary.
you, yeah. So Jordan Peterson does it really, or explains it in a very, very interesting way. He says if you want to move your hand from this point to this point very, very, very smoothly at a very fine tune, you just do your hand by itself, you might have a little bit of shake, you might have a little bit of variation. It's going to move fluidly, but not very precisely. If you want to move something precisely, you have an opposing force, right? And now I can move extremely precisely. Okay. Oh,
That's how
excuse
you
me.
build muscles.
Yeah. Yes. So if you have a wife that as you're moving, you're going forward towards these goals, and she's questioning you or she's challenging you in certain areas. Now, I'm not saying constantly,
Absolutely.
but you always want a little bit of challenge along the way, especially if it's anything where she's like, "Hey, what you said you're about to do, you said a while back that you were never going to do something like that, or that was against your moral values or whatever it is." Okay, well now you have somebody that can kind of check you once in a while if
Absolute
you're truly well, and you can
accountability.
do the same thing to
Yes.
her as well. So
Yes.
if you're truly loving each other and you're truly being there for the other person, that's the goal. You want to be there for the other person both ways. You're trying to help each other become the best versions of yourself that you can be, hold each other accountable, do those things. So it's very important to be in alignment with certain things. There's certain core values that you really want to make sure that you agree on before you make that kind of commitment. But that I think that's the best advice I could give anybody on that. Just communicate as much as you possibly can about the most deepest things that you yourself might not even know about yourself yet. So communicate about all everything that you can come up with. Just ask each other questions. Just random scenarios. Like you don't have any children yet. Ask about all the children things. How would you discipline them? How are we going to teach them? How are we going to raise them? Are we going to ever let anybody else watch them? What about sleepovers? Things like all anything and everything you could possibly imagine to do with children. How are you going to do that? Who's going to change the diapers? Who's going to do anything, whatever you can think of? So,
I
um,
we actually
go
went
ahead.
over a book called 100 Questions to Ask Before You Get
Yeah.
Married. And I think that was really good because the answers were they're very difficult questions, thought out questions. And but I mean, look, this is my take on it. You could ask 1,000 questions, you ask 100,000 questions, but at the end of the day, if you don't have that foundation of prayer and faith, and is God in the marriage? Are you guys praying together? Are you reading the Word of God together? You're not going to be successful. It's just too much. There are too many variables. You're two independent
Hmm.
people, and there has to be a authority. But I think also that integrity, you have to have that moral integrity with yourself to where, okay, I know I don't like this when somebody does this to me. You have to have that relationship. You have to love yourself. You have to like yourself, and you can't like yourself if you're not doing the goals that you said you're going to do. And I think that's important as far as building that emotional equity with yourself. When you're saying, okay, if I say I'm going to get in the cold shower and do something, I'm going to damn well do it regardless of how I feel, because discipline is hard. And you're doing that year after year, month after month, you're being consistent. So you're not gonna, and if you see on a subconscious level, I'm talking these things always happen on a subconscious level. So you know that, okay, if this girl is gonna talk down to me like this, and she's gonna be the mother of my children, I'm not gonna put up with this. I'm gonna hold the line because I believe that I'm worthy enough, because I've proven myself to myself time and time again that I'm worthy enough to where I'm strong enough. So, um, but there's accountability that comes with that. I mean, she will
Hmm.
point out your flaws, and she will say, like, "Hey, well, I thought you were. Are you the man that I'm seeing that you're advertising?" Or now that you're living together, she's really seeing, how do you really live your life? Are you sleeping in playing video games? Video games are fun. Video games are addictive. I like watching the news. I like getting up on YouTube and stuff. But we need to do some stuff. Like this morning, I kind of wanted to play a little video game a little bit more, but I said, hey, she got ready before I did because women take longer. So we go out and do this exercise. So we got up, we did the exercise. I had to shut it down because she's calling me to do the exercise. But it's a constant. It's a constant maintaining that, okay, new goals, new thing, new
Hmm.
strategies. And then as you have a family, your kids are looking at that and you're
Yep.
creating them, and they're seeing the mini version of yourself and be like, okay, well, I see my dad do this. I guess I can do it, and it's okay. So,
Hmm.
anyway, let's take it home. How would your book help new couples and maybe people that are just starting out with kids? Is there going to be some parenting tips in there, and there going to be some stuff like that about relationships and communication?
I don't know about parenting tips yet. However, a lot of the stuff that is going to be in the connection portion, the esteem portion, and then the self actualization portion. A lot of that will definitely pertain to parenthood. These are more or less soft skills that everyone should learn. So the way that I'm seeing this is the hierarchy of existence. This is how you the hierarchical structure of the needs for existence. Existence is just living, right? Life. So figure out how to take care of yourself first. Figure out how to manage your own psychological state and your own physiological state. Figure out how to manage all that. Figure out how to apply structure to your life and security and all those things. And then once you've established that basic fundamental taking care of yourself, now you can extend that out to others. Not necessarily to just take care of others, though in the case of parenthood, yes, you are directly taking care of the food needs and all that stuff for the children, as well as the stability, safety, all that. However, that's not the end goal. The end goal is to be able to teach them to do that for themselves. So that's the whole idea behind my book, is to help people live in the most harmonious and most conducive way to life itself. So I'm really trying to break that down on a fundamental level, and hopefully I can make that in a bit of a program, or at least a progressive stage kind of setup, to where you can come in there and don't matter where you're at. You might read through the first half of the book, like, I got all this stuff down. I don't even need this part of it. But then you're going to hit that part. Okay, this is where I'm struggling. I can pick up this, and maybe that's that one key that you needed to get over that hump to get to the rest of your life, or get through the fulfillment part. Because there's often, especially as adults and people that are a little further along in their education and experience, most people are looking for something to give them fulfillment, something to make them feel like they are bringing value to the others. And I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to apologize if y'all can hear the chickens in the background over here. I got a rooster going crazy.
Oh no, I
Um,
don't hear him though.
but okay, good. He's making a lot of noise over there. It's a little distracting. But we're all trying to be fulfilling. We're trying to make our life feel like it's worth living. I mean, I've met people who have committed suicide, and that's a really rough thing to see someone who has literally given up on their life. They like, I have no purpose for being here. Why am I here? And the next thing you know, they're gone. Right? I know a guy that purposely overdosed, because he could not find a reason to continue existing, and that really hit me. And I'm trying to make it to where, look, let's figure out how to achieve that. Well, come to find out, there's a progressive state that you have to go through. You got to figure out how to take care of yourself first, and now you can bring value to other people. So that's kind of where I'm going out with this book.
And when will it be available, and how can people get a hold of you?
The availability, I'm still unsure yet. I'm hoping that I'll have it finished maybe in the next 6 to 8 months. I really don't know. If you want to get a hold of me, I've got YouTube. I'm working on the other social media platforms as well. I'm trying to get them all, but YouTube primarily is live, learn, do, all in one word. I'm gonna start posting some more videos on there more often, and most of it's gonna be revolved around this book itself. So if you're curious about anything, I do watch the comments and things along those lines. So I'd be happy to chat with anybody, or anything else like that along these lines.
Okay, great. So we'll keep in touch. Thank you for coming on the show. You want to
Yes,
say
sir.
anything before I stop the recording?
That's all I got. I appreciate you having me again, Jerry.
All right, great. Thanks for coming. We'll have you come back in. We'll touch base soon. Thanks for coming.